This is the model we're looking at, the Hafco Woodmaster BP-305. It's about 9 years old. These have been superseded by the 310. It's just a 12-inch, 1 horsepower, hobbyist style bandsaw. And it serves me really well. I've really enjoyed using this unit. It's looking a bit older now, but a few things to play around with. I had some issues with the table recently. It's probably its weak spot is the way the table tilts. Not the strongest mechanism underneath, but I don't tilt the table much at all, so it sits flat in my use. But today we've got a new set of blade guides to replace these original ones, and what I've basically done is worked out that the current models of blade guides, based on all the photos and the reckoning I did with that, should fit onto this with a minor modification. So here's the replacement blade guides, and you notice there that there's a little handle that's to replace metal one to replace the plastic one that's stripped on the underneath of the trunnion. But we'll get to that later. Okay, let's start by removing the top wheel. Simple circlip removal. Not overstretching the circlip. We've got to get that past here, so we'll release the blade tension and we'll lower the blade guide to give clearance here, and of course then the wheel pops off. And the next step is to actually just remove this section here by removing that, careful of the spring, and then that pops off. You don't have to undo these screws on this model. You should be able to just angle that out, and it's a little bit of a puzzle to get it past this point here, but it does find its way out on the right angle. So here we go. Here's the blade guide set up. You can actually see front on that the blade guides are sitting on an angle. I'll talk to that specifically in a moment. That's the old blade guides. So we will remove them by removing those screws, but to get to those screws we probably best remove the blade guide at the bottom. Okay, here we are at the mini workbench, and it's time to remove these blade guides. I was mentioning that the blade guides themselves don't sit square. Now you can see that here in this view. This item here has a grub screw there, and essentially that flat spot on the grub screw really sets the angle of this blade guide setup. And in this case you can see that's probably square or almost square, but it's not quite, so there's some machining tolerance issue there. And the grub screw itself, to my eye, doesn't look like it's in the center of the casting, so this particular grub screw. So if I rotate that up a little bit, that looks more close to center if I roll that over, and in fact that's probably where the center of the flat is. It's a little bit hard to see, but that's essentially one of the main reasons why this blade guide is hanging on that angle. Now, it hasn't been a massive issue, but if you're able to look straight down there, you can sometimes see that those blade guides are crooked to the blade. In fact, I can see it quite significantly when I look down there. Let's see if we can get some light in there. There you go. You should be able to see that. So these ones, you know, I haven't had great success with them, and it's one of the reasons why I want to change them out. Now let's see what it takes to get these off. There's 2 Allen keys that fit this machine, and I only had one of them here on the bench. So this smaller one is not the one for the grub screw there, but we've just freed up. We can, if we undo it a little bit more, we can free up that. I'll just tighten it in that position. I won't be able to take it off in this position. I'll just lightly cinch it there, and that then allows me to access the screws that are on the bottom. There's 2 screws on the base of this, and we'll just undo those now. I'm just using a Phillips head screwdriver. Yeah, they're not tight at all. There's dust pouring out of that. This hasn't been undone before this exercise, so that's obviously collected some dust over the years. Alright, that part we'll set aside and have a closer look at this blade guide assembly. Now I don't want to lose those screws because we may have to put all this back together. There's the assembly. I shall undo that to remove the blade guide, and I can immediately see from my view, I'll put that on the table there. In fact, I'll sit it down that hole, that'll make it easier for you to see. And I'll get a small square, a small machinist square, place it on this flat and place it on that flat, and I can just see, you might be able to see it yourself, I can just see that that's out of square. If I hold it on the flat there, yeah, that's a little bit more difficult. If I hold it on that flat, oh, you can see clearly that's out of square, and that's the reason why those blade guides are crooked. So that basically that's that grub screw's not drilled in the center axis of this part, which basically is a manufacturing flaw that I've had for the whole life of the whole life of the saw. You can see significant wear on that surface there. These are now a bit jammed. I'll pull that out. It's a little bit clogged. This part's a replacement part, I'm not sure, but you can't get these as replacement parts, which I think is a bit odd. Now there's another issue there. You can see that that those aren't meeting at the same point. So one of these is not drilled. They look like they're parallel, but this one looks like it's drilled further up the casting as compared to that one. So, you know, these aren't the most expensive bandsaws, but you know, you sort of expect things to be square in the manufacturing. The next step we'll look at is potentially fitting of replacement guides to the bottom of this extrusion. Well, the first order of business is to order the part. So here we have the upper guide assembly. This is the one for the current machine, and it actually showed up with the wrong support block supplied. And so I got in touch with the supplier here in Forbes, and after showing them these photos via email, they quickly replaced with the correct model. So well done, thank you here in Forbes, I appreciate that. However, if we take a closer look, these parts, you can see that the connecting shaft is not square in the support block, and it's good in this axis, but what it means is the blade guides are going to hang drooped down. So I got onto them again with email, some more photos, and I'm still waiting. I chased them up a few times, but after no further response, I reluctantly gave up on them. My machine's probably not the biggest and most expensive machine they sell and support. But it is important to me, so I decided to have a bit of a chat with Dad and asked him to have a go at fixing them because he's got a good little workshop with lathe and milling machine. I've just been tapping the dust out of here and it's almost all out, but it's quite interesting how it came out. It's certainly a lot of dust jam packed up in the shape of the extrusion there. Okay, here we are at the mini workbench. We've overcome the problem with the mounting block here and the inaccurately drilled hole. Well, here's a closer look at the parts we received first, and the wrong support block was supplied. There were two issues with this support block, and the first one is that the connecting shaft is just too short. It doesn't hold the blade guides far enough out towards the blade. And the second one is actually fairly obvious here, that it's machined out of square. And of course, that means that any blades guides that are sitting there will actually be driving the blade off course and causing drift in any cuts. My father, who's got a milling machine, just a small one, has bored out the hole here square, and he's actually turned up on the lathe a new shaft made of bronze. So that replaces the original shaft, which was in fact also a little bit too short here. So there's the original shaft at 10mm. That's obviously been bored out a bit larger to take into account for the original crooked hole that was in there. So we've got a new shaft, and it's nice and long enough to work appropriately. The blade guides sit in there, and they can sit forward a fair way, and they're nice and square. Now this has to be fitted to the bottom of that, and then we'll also need to do that cutout just to allow it to come further forward if there's a need to. So that looks like it's going to fit on nicely. There's a hole we need to drill to take that keeper bolt, so that we'll need to mark that up carefully, and then allow us to drill that hole through from the back to put that screw in, and this other screw hole down in here is going to work quite nicely. So I think that's going to work quite nicely. I'm very happy with that. I also have another one of these of the more recent type, which also has had a replacement shaft because it was also incorrectly drilled. So now that we've got our parts ready, we'll start to look at the modifications to the bandsaw, and I think we'll do that in the next video. So look out for part 2 of the upper guide replacement video.